Well, your channel is titled Nonduality and Enlightenment Simplified.
Yep.
So, how would you explain it simply? Let's get right into this thing. Like, how would you dive into that in a simple manner?
Well, the short answer, you know, most people have heard of non-duality, I think, but just the simple idea that there is no other, the idea of otherness and separation is an illusion. And enlightenment or awakening is simply realizing this for yourself.
Here we go. All right, that's the end of the podcast, everybody.
Yep, that's it.
Thanks for tuning in. Well, that's great. Yeah, I mean that's a good one-line summary of the whole thing. So, what is this that one realizes? If we could touch upon that, what are we really enlightening to ourselves?
It's mostly about what we're not. I mean, we've grown up and become very identified with the body and the stories that we tell about ourselves, or successes, failures, whatever. So really it's realizing that we're not that. We're not any of that.
Mm-hmm.
Also the basic assumptions of being the mind or the body, also we're not that. And so that's really what's seen. That's why so many spiritual teachers will say, seeking out the truth isn't really what you need to do. It's more of seeing the false as false.
I see.
So the awakening and enlightening is seeing all this stuff that I thought I wasn't any of that.
Yeah. And then thus the truth ensues from that, right?
And the truth arises out of that. Once the misconceptions and the misunderstandings and incorrect and our beliefs, once that's why so many of the paths or traditional schools of Advaita and non-duality, this area, they tend to focus on negation and destruction. They take down what you're not. They destroy the ego. Mm-hmm. They're not there to give you proofs or the truth or ideas. That arises once you clear all the false out of the way.
Yeah. So how do we go about doing that? Would you say like clearing the false out of the way and negating what we're not? Like, what are some avenues that one could practice or not practice?
Really, when I talk about what we can do, it comes down to two things, and the second one will answer this question. I mean, the first thing is just be still, be silent, be fully aware, not even thinking. Regularly doing this is conducive, but that usually isn't the most fulfilling for a seeker or an ego. At some point, you hit this point where like, I gotta do something. What can I do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you insist on doing something, then you look at this me that you believe and feel yourself to be, and delve into it, question it, play a little devil's advocate, start shooting holes into your own theory of what you are.
I see. Yep.
Look for the exceptions of the rule. And so, a lot of this is just, and it comes down to just looking. I mean, you can look and then perhaps you may see, and then the seeing changes the understanding and it goes from there. So, if somebody says, well, I'm the body. Okay, well, let's go with that. Are you all the body or are you part of the body?
Yeah.
And I've had people come back, go, well, I'm all the body. Okay, well, let's go with that. If you get a fingernail clipping or a haircut, are you less so? Have you lost something of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, I still feel I'm totally me. I'm not diminished in some way. Okay, well, then those are two parts you're not.
Yeah.
And you can go through, due to childhood ailments, there's tonsils, there's appendix, there's organs that can be removed, there's organ transplants. You just start whipping through each thing. And this isn't a mental practice. It's more experiential. It's more visceral. You literally want to almost experience or play through it, where it's like, yeah, I feel that when I get a fingernail clipping, I'm not diminished. It's not simply saying, oh yeah, of course I'm not diminished when I get a fingernail clipping. That's too cerebral. That's too mental. It's more visceral. I feel it. Yes, I'm not diminished if I lose my fingernails. Okay, well, if you had your tonsils removed, yes, I'm not diminished if that.
I see.
And so as you're going through this, you're experientially discovering what you're not.
Yeah, so it just really comes down to a simple examination, experiential examination of the self. Really just asking the question, like, what the hell am I? What is all this, right? Like, what
Yeah.
what is all this?
Well, I mean, much of the beginning of the spiritual journey is introspection. I mean, and the value is we just don't look. And so this starts the looking process. Well, let's look at this. Let's take my basic assumption that I am whatever and investigate it. Are there exceptions? Can I see an alternative route? And you may find that, eventually you're not most of what you've been taking to be yourself for a long time. And, some of the stuff is experiential. Eventually there are a few walls that you have to take more theoretically and maybe study up a little bit. Because I know usually most people get through the body pretty quick. And then they get to the brain and they're like, well, I'm somewhere in there. And well, then you have to go, well, what part of the brain? All the brain or some of the brain? And then again, somebody goes, well, no, I'm all the brain. Okay, well, if you get smashed drunk, you've lost tens of thousands, if not millions of brain cells. Are you less so the next morning?
Yeah.
No. Well, you weren't those brain cells. Okay, let's continue. And, that's where you can almost delve into medical research, where they start finding, they've had different parts of the brain removed. They've had entire hemispheres removed, different lobes. And the person always comes back going, yep, I'm still me.
Yeah.
I've always been me. The personality might change. Memories might change. That's what happens when the brain's fooled with. But fundamentally, the person doesn't come back saying, I'm a totally different person. They're always saying, no, I'm still me. I remember since birth, I'm still me. I've always been me. That starts poking holes into the idea of you're some part of it. But that one's less experiential because science just hasn't progressed far enough. I mean, this is all a learning curve, because it wasn't so long ago. We're talking about hundreds of years, which isn't long when you think about all of humanity. But there were cultures and times where people thought the soul resided in the heart. That what you were, your very being, was in the heart. And they would be horrified at the idea of a heart transplant. You're transplanting somebody else in somebody else's body.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And, so it took science and being able to transplant hearts for that to shatter that idea of the water.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, eventually, who knows? They might be able, through stem cells, be able to regrow parts of your own brain and fuse it back in. And then the question really becomes, are you any of those parts that can be transplanted?
Yeah. It seems like humanity is looking for almost like a central hub, like a central command post for the self, And right now, I guess the popular consensus is the brain. But then, like you said, when you dive into the different parts of the brain, or you take like a certain part out, or you get inebriated, it's like you still hold that sense of self in a way. It just might be a little bit changed up. So it's like that. Is it really the brain then? Is it actually like what part of the brain? If it's the brain, go ahead.
There's also multiple illusions going on. I mean, we assume there's the brain, but part of that is because of the sensory illusion. The majority of the senses are in the head: the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue. And so we think we're back there behind all the senses. But here's an interesting thought experiment, almost experiential. Again, play with it. But if all the senses were actually on your foot, you would probably think you're there.
Yeah. Wow. And you know what's interesting too? If you have like a really painful foot ache or you got something going on with your foot, really painful, right? You probably would think that in a way that you are residing in your foot in that moment. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah.
Like if
Now,
you
now, combine that with the idea if the eyes, the ears, the nose, and everything was at the foot.
exactly, yeah.
It's like, my God, everything, all the input is reinforcing that I am here.
Yeah.
But it's an incorrect assumption based on where the senses are and having a nervous system that feels.
Yeah. So through this self-examination method, one can find that the self transcends the senses, right?
It transcends the senses and conscious awareness. We're not the experience nor the conscious awareness of what's going on.
Yeah. So what are we, man? Where is the central hub? Is there one?
Being.
The moment.
You know, in advaita they sometimes call it consciousness. You know, pure consciousness or absolute reality, or you know, what we are is that.
Yeah.
But the thing is instead of, you know, but even that isn't something we can identify with. See, the thing is, ultimately, I say that enlightenment and awakening is shattering all identification. Because you can't, I mean, even if you called the ultimate, you know, reality or pure consciousness or being or that, if you, the self, whatever you named it, if you turned around and identified with it and say, I am that, you would still be incorrect.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what you're identifying with is a concept, and the concept can only contain that which is known.
Yeah, which contains a duality in itself.
Yeah. And so, you know, usually, you know, I'll even use the word sometimes self or pure consciousness or, you know, these other terms that you'll commonly see in Advaita or non-duality. And I make the point that it's not something you can identify with. So don't try to latch onto it and say, well, I'm that. Well, no, the very fact that you believe in a me in the first place is the error.
Yeah, exactly. It's
because the me, and if you go back far enough in your own life, the me was acquired. I mean, psychologists will say that newborns, infants have an oceanic feeling. There's no thought, there's no sense of a me. That's acquired.
Yeah.
We start discovering that there's that which can be controlled and there's that which can't be controlled. And that starts the illusion of me and other.
Yeah, exactly. So even though the self, it can't be labeled, you know, we're talking here, so we're going to try and label it. It's more of like you said, an oceanic feeling. It's more of like a current that flows through the moment. And it's a wave. It's an ebb and flow that one can attune to, right? Is that more so touching upon the essence?
It can be more of that, but I tend to like to point out that enlightenment or awakening is not any experience. So it's not about feeling oceanic or one with everything, because there are experience of being one with everything. I mean, many years, you know, earlier, prior to awakening and my spiritual journey, I remember being or meditating in a park when I was in college, and suddenly it was like I felt like one with everything, the trees, and you know. And yeah, these experiences of oneness can come and go, but that's not it. That's not enlightenment. So, although after awakening and enlightenment, the very fact that there is no other is apparent and otherness cannot be believed. And yes, even there can be periodic feelings of oneness, and you might even be more prone to it, being there's not this division popping in mind. But I would say enlightenment and awakening is more about the cessation of experiencing separation or otherness.
Yeah.
We constantly feel that we're separate. There's me and the rest of the world. We're constantly feeling division. And so I would say it's more about that experience ceasing to arise,
Mm-hmm.
rather than a new experience of oneness and oceanic coming in.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because no experience is ever constant. Even
Yeah.
if there was a feeling of oneness, it would soon fade. Because that's what happens. I mean, the brain keeps track of changing phenomenon. Anything that's constant, you don't feel. You never feel the 15 odd pounds of air pressure crushing the body at all times.
Mm.
We're always feeling it, so you never feel it. And if you're on a train with no windows, and it's on like a maglev train, for example, so it's unbelievably, no sensation. Unless you are accelerating or decelerating, you won't know how fast you're going or if you're moving at all.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good metaphor.
And that's the nature of experience, is we only experience that which changes. And so if you're constantly feeling separation and the separation goes, yeah, you temporarily might feel expanded, oceanic.
Yeah.
But as that becomes the norm, it fades and goes away.
Wow. Mm. Yeah. Man, that's good. So do you do you think this is something? I know it's not something, but do you know, in the matter of speaking, do you see that this is like a something that the human mind almost yearns for, like a yearning for that reconnection to that current, a connection to really everybody else? Like there's something in us that knows that that's a thing, yet we're just looking in the wrong places, you know?
Um, it's been described that way, that we're always seeking wholeness or oneness and completion in some way and looking in the wrong way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the way the ego formed and because of our beliefs and concepts, a very common feeling among people is, I'm missing something. There's like a hole
Yeah.
inside of
Exactly.
us,
Mm-hmm.
or there's something wrong with me. And in which case they're always trying to look for what will correct,
Yeah.
but in some way, everybody's coming from lack. The ego fundamentally lacks. And so we're all coming from lack.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're trying to figure out a way to fill the hole. But whether you look through physical acquisition, mental acquisition, emotional acquisition, spiritual acquisition, none of it will fill the hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I like putting it this way. We were born, there was no borders, no walls, oceanic. Then we were given a name, and that became our box. And then we start putting stuff in the box to
Yeah.
fill up the box. But then we go, the box still feels empty because there's gaps between everything.
Mm.
There's still hole, there's space. The box isn't full. I need to fill this box. The problem is it's fundamentally impossible to fill the box with stuff and fill everything.
Yeah. There's always
And
going to be
that's why
space.
a lot of non-duality and advaita, they'll one of the practices is neti, not this, not that, and they're just nope, and they're just emptying the box. I'm not this, nope, nope. And eventually you get down to an empty box and you toss the box. I'm not that either. Then you're back to space.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Wow.
And when that happens, there's a chance you may realize you are that space. You are that beingness that was there all along prior to all the stuff that was accumulated. And that is complete in and of itself. It wasn't lacking anything in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
The perception of lack is because of the box, the ego and identity we have.
Yeah. The damn box. The box of the ego. Where does that come from, would you say? The box of the ego. Is this our conditionings for survival over the years? Is this our lower nature?
I mean, it comes from fairly understandable assumptions. The that which I can control, that which I can't control.
Mm-hmm.
No one can be faulted for the assumption, well, then I must be what I can control, and I'm not what I can't control.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's a faulty assumption because you're currently not controlling your pineal gland.
Mm.
But if somebody believes I'm the body, well, then based on that, anything you're not controlling, you're not. So I'm not controlling my stomach. I'm not controlling my heart rate. I'm not. How much of your body are you actually controlling? So, I mean, if you go with one assumption, that's the funny thing. Our assumptions are often contrary. We like having the belief that I'm that which I control, but at the same time saying I'm the body without realizing we don't control most of the body.
Yeah. Right. Mm.
And so the mind's able to segment these conflicting beliefs and keep them compartmentalized rather neatly. But so as I was saying, it's a very natural assumption, understandable assumption, even though it's incorrect, to say that which I control is me, that which I can't control is not me. And that's the start of it. But for humans, a lot of it's also conditioned. We're talked to as if we're our bodies. Stop fidgeting. Why can't you sit still? It's like, it's
our whole lives.
Everybody treats you as if you are the body and what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody is more or less under the same incorrect assumption of I'm that which I control. I'm that which I'm consciously aware of. These various assumptions that we have. And it's just not, it's never investigated. So most people just live under that without questioning it.
Yeah.
But that's the basis of it, is there's a combination, at least for humans, of rather natural, understandable assumptions that are wrong and the conditioning of everybody around us saying this is the way it is.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, even if somebody came to a slightly different assumption, all your parents, your elders, your betters are all going to say you're wrong as a child, and you'll soon conform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we've done. It's just a giant confirmation over the years into this giant box. We're all in the same box, even though we're in our individual boxes. We're all in the giant box of our ego, essentially, living in this weird illusionary state, it seems. But here we are having this conversation, kind of hopefully getting out of the box in a way, or I don't even know if that's the right way to say it, but
well, it's more of just, it's not like you need to get rid of the ego or totally shatter the box. I mean, there's a certain amount of work towards that helps. It loosens it up, so to speak. It's kind of like, the house of cards might be fairly stable, but you start breaking down these identifications or investigate this stuff, it starts making you a little more unstable and shaky.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for it to collapse on its own.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, man, like we still have an ego no matter what, even though I know deep down, essentially, you're me, I'm you, I'm the listener, I'm everything, and I'm also not that at the same time. But there's still this show going on. I'm here on this side of the screen and you're there on that side of the screen. So it's like we still have the game to play, but simultaneously we play the game knowing that it's a game. It's like the game gets played differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the game goes on and the characters are playing, but you're not any of the characters. And the ego is just, it's more of a mirage. And after enlightenment or awakening, it becomes a useful servant, a tool for the character to play.
Yeah,
because
I think that's the
because I know so many people are like, well, they're trying to kill the ego or destroy the ego, and they're like, well, how do I get rid of my ego? I'm like, you really don't want to do that. You wouldn't be able to answer to your name when called if you had no ego.
Yeah.
Some ego is fundamentally needed to still be able to live and act in the world.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is if you identify with it and the ego is master.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the difference. Is the ego is master, or is the master, I mean, you? I mean, you know, I mean, the
The master
self.
just being.
Yeah,
It's just
exactly.
everything.
Yeah. That's the big difference. That's the big switch, because I know in the non-dual talk, one could say that there is no switch and nothing changes. But to me, I think the big change is really that, is that one becomes more playful with this egoistic portrayal of Gary that one may see, the character, you know, the happenings of the body and what we decide to do. It's like we decide to become more, yeah, more playful, more wondrous with this whole thing, knowing that the show goes on, but the show is a little different. I don't know how else
Well,
to explain it.
it's. I'll try. I'll add on to in two different ways. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the life game goes on, but the difference is instead of taking the game very seriously
Yeah,
and suffering when it doesn't go your way,
yeah, yeah.
instead you can play the game sincerely, enjoy whatever the outcome it might be.
Mm-hmm. That's huge, man. That's the biggest thing that one, not, I mean, I don't know how else to say it because it's nothing you get, but that's the biggest thing one could get from this whole idea of non-duality and enlightenment, is that there's least resistance in the phenomena of life. There's like less suffering, one could say, right? That's because like one could look at these conversations and all the videos on your channel and be like, what, why? Like, what is this? If you don't know any better, it's like, why is this guy, well, why would I want enlightenment, if that makes sense? I know there's nothing to want there, but it's for somebody that has no inclination toward that and gets exposed to this stuff. It's like, what is the point? If I know there's no point, right? But they'll be like, what is the point? And I guess you could sum it up really simply in the spirit of our conversation, really simply, is that, well, it's a way to kind of negate one's suffering that happens in one's life, right? Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would rephrase it slightly as it is that it comes down to the realization or insight of the body, which then causes a cessation of suffering to arise for that body.
Yeah.
Which basically saying the same thing, just removing any element of me in there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you just wanted to say it, using the conventions of speech, yeah, it's a cessation of suffering.
Yeah.
But the thing is I find that, if somebody asks me, well, what's the benefits of enlightenment? If I need to sell it to them, then they're already off on the wrong foot.
Is that what you would say?
Yeah.
Because I mean, but if there is a genuine curiosity and someone asked you that straight up, would you say, "Hey, man, it's not up to me"? Would you say
Well,
that?
it depends how they ask, because I've had some people approach me and go, what are the benefits of enlightenment, as if they want me to sell it to them, and I'm like, I can't sell it to you. Either
Yeah.
you're interested or you're not. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're not interested, it's not my place to try to get you interested, because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's the
But
tricky thing.
if somebody comes up out of curiosity and actual has a sense of wonder in terms of, what are the benefits, out of curiosity, I would just say, well, the body ceases to have suffering arise. Basically, you quit causing suffering to yourself,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and but at the same time, I would temper that saying, but you don't want to focus too much on that, because immediately upon trying to make enlightenment of use and utility for a me, everything you're doing now for enlightenment is just strengthening the me, which is the very thing you're trying to see through.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's counterintuitive. Mm. Yeah. It's tricky, man. It's definitely tricky. Damn. Yeah, man. I don't even know what to say.
Well, it's tricky only because so many people are trying to cause or influence or otherwise get enlightenment. But enlightenment is a lot like trying to fall asleep at night. If we go to bed with the intent I must fall asleep because I've got an important meeting tomorrow, you find it very hard to fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you do to try to influence falling asleep. Well, maybe if I do this, I'll fall asleep. Maybe if I do this, fall asleep. It just keeps you awake. You just can't fall asleep.
Yeah.
The more you try, the more it gets in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean there's absolutely nothing we can do to fall asleep? Well, no. That's why we go into a dark and quiet room and lay down and get comfortable, because it's conducive to falling asleep. It makes us sleep, it helps us fall asleep. Is any of this required to fall asleep? Of course not. You could be sleeping, sitting up in a chair in the sun. You don't need dark. You don't need quiet. You don't need to be laying down. None of that's required.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It does help, though.
Yeah.
And enlightenment is that way. There's things we can do to create a bit more of a conducive environment for the grace accident happening to occur.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't directly cause it. And the more that we try to cause it, the more we get in our own way.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? We go through, and I imagine in your path it was similar, but I've gone through various modalities of meditation, yoga, psychedelics, reading numerous books, having numerous conversations with people, only to find that really at the end of the day, I didn't need any of that. There's nothing that I really need. So it seems like, in a way, not everybody's path, but I find that a lot of people's path, right? At least personally speaking, was that like I'd gone through this whole journey per se, trying to find this thing, get this thing, enlightenment, this peace, find the light, man, only to find that what I was looking for the whole time was here and now, and there was absolutely nothing that needed to be done. It's a weird irony in that, right? Was that similar for you? Like, I imagine you had some kind of yogic path only to come to find that, wait a second, what am I looking for?
Well, my background was interesting in that I first of all never pursued enlightenment or awakening. I really wasn't even sure what it meant, because I encountered the term in various spiritual books and texts, and everybody was so contradictory to each other that I didn't know what they were pointing at. I'm like, I have no idea what it is. I'm not even sure if it exists. And if I can't figure it out, it doesn't matter. So I just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And
you still went on the search, though, right?
I was like my search was for truth. Okay. Ever since I was young, I could tell there's more to what is than what I'm seeing here. There's there's something there. I can't put my finger on it, but there's something there.
Yeah.
And but my spiritual search, I actually started with a rather eclectic group, so I was introduced to a lot of stuff. And funny enough, none of it was non-duality. So I ain't studying non-duality at all. But it was, it was Kabbalah, it was past life regression, it was, I think there was some Ekankar people, there was a Buddhist, it was an eclectic group. Yeah. And I was the youngest there, so everybody kind of took me under their wing and taught me what they knew. And then that started a reading frenzy. I mean, I read hundreds of books on anything that seemed interesting. And so, but all of it was path oriented stuff. You're here trying to get there, and this is how you do it. And I wasn't that consistent of a meditator. I wouldn't say I really liked meditating, and so I wasn't very consistent with it because it wasn't doing a lot for me, I didn't think. But that's kind of how my spiritual search went for about 13 years. And then I hit this point where every new book that I read seemed to be a rehash of something I'd already read.
Yeah.
And I finally just got frustrated with the search in general and thought it was futile and just gave up the search. So I quit it all. I quit reading new books. I quit meditating. I gave it all up. Still had no exposure to non-duality, but About a year, maybe two, after I gave up and hadn't done anything, um, I kept bumping into the name Eckhart Tolle. Now, in my search in spirituality, I did learn that of synchronicities, and anything that pops up repeatedly, you should probably pay attention to. And after Eckhart's name popped up like a half a dozen times in a week, I'm like, okay, I gotta read something by him,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to read anything by him. The last thing I want to do is read another book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually went to the library and found a video. He actually had a video on file. And so I got the DVD, and I'm like, great, in an hour and a half, I'll be done. So I got the DVD and watched it. And a lot of it was stuff I'd heard before, being present. You know, I thought I was being present. Of course, that was part of the problem, is I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point in the exercise, he was talking about inhabiting the body. And so I was inhabiting the body, and in just totally connecting with the feeling, sensing, experiencing going on, and being 100% devoted to it, the mind just died down to nothing. Again, not the first time I've been without thought and been totally present. I mean, I remember going to Machu Picchu and being awestruck by the scene, and I wasn't thinking anything for about 15 minutes. You know, there's times where I've done this, that, or the other thing, you know, art, sports, you know, playing music, listening to music. There's times where everybody doesn't think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying, oh, it was the first time I was present and something happened. No, I'm not, but I would say I was totally present. And that's when it happened. The apple just fell from the tree. And it was like, you know, there was this insight. It was an awakening. It was like, and things just kind of came into focus. I suddenly saw what I was kind of looking for, even though I didn't know I was looking for it. You know, I could tell there was something to what's going on, but I couldn't tell what. And suddenly I saw it. It's that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And similarly to what you mentioned, I in that moment I could also tell everything I had done for the prior 13 years of search, and the year or two after that where I did nothing. None of that had influenced or impact now.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I didn't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
But it was also clearly seen that even the Eckhart Tolle video wasn't the cause. It's not. I wouldn't say that was the cause of it, or being present was the cause. Being present was a more conducive environment. And if it wasn't for the Eckhart Tolle video, if I had just seen another scene or listened to music or something happened and there was a profound silence of presence, it could have happened then and there. It was just the timing was right for it to happen of its own accord. And a conducive environment of just being present was of help.
It seems like some kind of grace, right?
I sometimes call it a grace. Some people get hung up on it though, and they're like, "Well, where's the grace coming from?" And you know, how do you receive it? Suddenly, they're creating the whole duality trilogy of the one giving grace, the one receiving grace, and the grace being transmitted.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you know, you can call it a grace, you can call it an accident, but the brunt of the matter is you didn't cause it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could simply set a more conducive environment and be open to it. That's it. Either it happens or it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't happen, there's nothing you can particularly do about it, other than if you feel you got to do something, look at this me. Because, you know, having a firmly established misidentification does kind of get in the way of seeing who and what you really are. Because that's really what enlightenment is a visceral insight. It's a seeing what is as it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to see what is as it is, that being who and what you are, if you think you're something else. It's like, no, I'm this. You're never looking at past that. You can't see beyond that because you're going, no, this is me, and then you're looking at that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if it doesn't happen, all you can do is look at this me. And then when you get tired of looking at the me, return to being still, silent, fully aware, not even thinking.
Wow, man. Oh,
and for those that are suffering, sometimes I'll suggest, well, you can tackle your suffering too and try to diminish some of it if it's getting in the way. But I mean, that's getting into more of just trying to improve circumstances, so it's less of a distraction.
Yeah. Wow, man. Yeah. It really seems like just letting go of control, our idea of control here. You know, just being just at the whim of this flow, this certain kind of current of life, being open, and in that openness is some wholesomeness, and it is like a liberation, but it's without even chasing any kind of liberation. It's the weird irony in it. It's the more you chase it, the more that you imprison yourself. It's really just kind of like,
well, the very chasing it is reinforcing there is a prison in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of like somebody laying in a great plain with no walls. And you walk up to someone laying naked in a great plain, and they're going, "Hello, could you free me out of this straitjacket and open up the cell door?"
Yeah.
They're like, I can't help you. It's like, and the more that they're struggling against their own straitjacket, and the more they're trying to escape their bounds, they're only reinforcing the fact that these things exist in the first place.
Yeah.
They don't exist. The bondage never existed in the first place. So liberation. That's why some of the teachers get clever and they go, "There is no liberation." And people go, "What do you mean there's no liberation?" Well, there's got to be bondage in the first place for there to be liberation. And when the bondage disappears, there's no need for liberation.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the tricky part about words and trying to get something from somebody's teachings, because it never really does it truly justice. So it's kind of ironic that we're here doing this, playing with words, playing this game, and it's also ironic that we both have YouTube channels talking about it, right? Do you find like a certain kind of humor in that? In the whole idea. I mean, I know there's definitely there's a value to guiding people in one's liberation, even though you know liberation is not truly a thing. But you know what I'm saying? Like, do you find it funny that, you know, you have a whole channel dedicated to this thing that truly cannot be described? It's not even a thing.
Well, I don't have so much of a difficulty with that because I'm not trying to accurately explain anything. The point isn't to have only 100% truth and accurate and absolutely accurate descriptions, because I already know that's impossible. So I don't bother even trying. Mm-hmm. But what I do is the other thing is I just like talking about non-duality enlightenment. So I'm not particularly trying to instruct people. If they come back and post or send me an email that, "Hey, this helped," great. If they post and say it doesn't help, okay. Yeah. Either way, mm-hmm. I'm just talking about it because this is my favorite topic. Mm-hmm. But what I do try to do in making it apply is, when I see pitfalls or sticking points or things that tend to get people confused, I just try to clarify a bit or get them around the hump or around the pitfall. You know, if someone is really, really attached to, well, like I had somebody once go, "Well, this teacher says you need to meditate 24 hours a day. Yeah, and how do you do that? I can't sit more than an hour." They have in their head that seated meditation is the only form of meditation. So then I would go, well, there's also walking meditation, standing meditation, laying meditation, eating meditation. Mm-hmm. I go, if you learn to meditate while walking, you can throw a lawnmower in front of you and you can mow meditation. The whole idea of meditating 24 hours a day is just figuring out how to meditate, being maybe not physically still, but inwardly still, being potentially both inwardly and outwardly silent, but also fully aware and not thinking while doing simple activities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And in that way, it's unbroken. You might get up from your seated meditation and then go for a walk, and you're still meditating. There's an unbroken, continuous thing. And so that's what I do in my videos. Is I'll just, a lot of times I'm on discussion boards, or people email me questions, or these days with the internet, everything is out there and easy accessible. But I'll see themes, or I'll see certain sticking points, and that's where I like making the most videos. Is sticking points that seem to be causing a lot of people issues, and I try to clarify or help them get around it, or reframe it, or otherwise explain it in a different way.
I see. Yeah.
And those questions just let me keep talking about it, because without the questions, I run out of stuff to say.
Yeah, because there's only so much you can say about it. I see what you mean. Yeah, I see what you mean. So it's like unattached creation, like unattached guidance. Like you're not trying to get anything out of anybody. You're not trying to swindle anybody for anything. It's just like
non-attached and no expectations.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's very pure in that way. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. I get it now. You have to see though, it is funny, right? The idea of just talking about something that truly can't be talked about though, right? It's just, to me, sometimes I just laugh. It's like, why do I even have a podcast? What am I trying to do? But it is, yeah, it's just like you said, you do it for enjoyment. I do this for enjoyment as well. And we're both essentially in this moment just playing this game, we just play. What do you do when you play a game? You play it for fun. You play it for enjoyment, right? That's why we play games. So essentially, this is how I see this literally right now in this moment. This is just a game for my being. And I don't know.
It's a game I'm enjoying playing right now.
Yeah.
That's as much as I need out of it. I don't need to get enough out of it. Because that's the essence of play.
Yeah.
Play, you're not trying to get something out of it. If you're trying to get something out of it, if you're trying to get, if something meaningful or something has to come out of it, that's work.
Yeah. Exactly. And that makes the game shitty. No one wants to do that. You play the game for play. Like you said, you get so engrossed in the game, you almost become the game in a way. And then that's, like you said, it becomes enjoyable. And I think that's what life's about, man. At least for me, speaking from personal experience, life becomes a game in this mindset. Not only just on a podcast, speaking to people, but I try to bring that essence into the daily life of Gary Haskins. It's like, be more playful. See this thing as just a game. Not trying to get anything. No expectations. There's no narratives around this thing. Just play it. Just play this thing, man. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not telling anybody what to do.
The trick is being able to play even when it might not be pleasant. Because even when you're playing games and you're just getting creamed, it might not be pleasant.
Exactly.
But you still got to be able to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And so when you're playing the game of life, if you're sick, it might not be pleasant, but you still got to enjoy the game of life.
That's the key. Exactly, right? It's easy to say that, right? Oh, just play the game, man. We're sitting in our comfortable rooms, wherever we are, just chilling. We're most likely not suffering right now. Especially to anybody that's listening, and you and me, we're not suffering per se.
I haven't really suffered in 15 years, but it's more of it's because I don't have a problem with what's going on. If I'm unemployed, I'm unemployed, which I am currently. I do what I can to get my next job. I'm not particularly suffering or worried about it. If I happen to catch a cold or otherwise get ill, well, then I'm ill. If I get a headache, I'm in pain. I mean, get an aspirin. I mean, do what you can. So, I mean, whether single, married, healthy, sick, or any of the parameters of life you can think of, that's one of the reasons in Indian philosophy they make such a big deal out of what do they call it, equanimity, where you see it. It's not that you have to see everything as equal, it's that you don't have a problem with anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I mean, yeah, you can understand equanimity. Sometimes they'll talk about, well, then our gold piece and our stone is equal. Well, yeah, they are equal, but also while you're playing the game, one has more value than the other. That can be understood.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you dumb to have equanimity. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But anyways, but it's about also your own life circumstances. Whether you're employed or unemployed, you don't have a particular problem with each. You do what you can. If you're sick or healthy or injured. I mean, I was playing in a wood shop and I took that's right, this one got a big scar here, but I took a 1/4-inch Fostner bit to the hand. And you just deal with it. I wasn't throwing a fit that it happened. I wasn't resisting that it happened. It wasn't a big problem. I wasn't going, oh, it's my dominant hand. What am I going to do now? And just make all the stories and commentary. And it was more of, it's like, oh, I took a drill bit to the hand. What can I do now? Well, this is what I'm going to need to do in order to get to the clinic and go get it looked at. And it's like, and then when you're working, it's like, okay, how can I adapt to be able to continue working? Because I had a day job at the time. And it's like, you just do what you can, but you're not resisting, denying, fighting what is. And that's what causes a lot of the suffering is we're denying, fighting, and resisting what is. Particularly if it's a fact, it's a reality. And that's what reality is it's what is. And if you're going to fight what is, you're going to lose. Reality always wins.
Reality always wins. So true. Yeah. We try to push or pull or try to change it. That just creates more suffering. It digs our hole even deeper.
But it's not that you can't do anything. It's that it changes the relationship. Instead of being combative and conflict, fighting, resisting reality, instead you could be more cooperative, collaborative, and work with reality. In that way, it's almost like a great Aikido master. He never fights the incoming attack.
Yeah.
He goes with it, redirects it, and makes the person throw themselves to the ground.
Yeah. Go with the energy. Exactly.
You go with the energy. You never fight straight on. And and that's why it sometimes takes overcoming the instinctual and automatic no that arises in people. We think something happens and we immediately go, no.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with pain.
And so yeah, you have to get rid of that reflex and have more of an embracing yes arise to whatever's coming. It's like, okay, I'll take it. Let's see what we can do now.
That's the essence, right? Yeah, that's the gist. So it goes. Yeah, and in that is the play that we talked about. In that is that playfulness.
Yeah,
it's that sense of wonder. It is like almost childlike in a way because children almost seem at that point, right? And when you look at it, think of a child, right? The archetype of a child, they're just so engrossed in this, the flow, the current. They're just so engrossed with the energy of whatever's going on in the current moment. The current moment. I never realized it was actually phrased like that. The current moment. They're in the current moment. They're in the current the flow, man. It seems like that, right? To touch upon that childlike essence that we all have, that we all grew out of, right? That's like closer to our true being. If there is something that we can kind of have an idea of the true being, it's more of childlike in a way, right?
Well, it's also they're looking at things many times as if it's the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
And an adult mindset we have is to be very, very superficial. A lot of it's due to the sensory overload. There's just so much going on that we've gotten very good at superficially looking at things. And then once we label it or make a judgment, it's dismissed and not even looked at anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's the looking more deeply, really being with what is. That helps get back to some of that childhood wonder because, if a butterfly flies by, an adult might go, oh, it's a bug. But for a child, it's like, wow, I saw a butterfly.
Yeah, exactly, man. Mm-hmm.
And
So
so
true.
it's, if you see a cloud that's vaguely rabbit shaped, for an adult, they're like, hey, it's a cloud. For a child, it's like, hey, look, that cloud looks like a rabbit.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just, the world is entertaining, but you got to really see everything deeply, not superficially, and you got to quit um, cursory judgment and just, it's like, oh, I know what that is, or I've seen that before, because that's what happens. We build up this pattern of, I've seen that before, that you're always looking for something new, and then anything that's not, then if you're in a situation that's not changing, you call it boring.
Yeah,
But
right. Can't
but
win.
you but you fundamentally lost something even more significant, in that no situation is ever the same. Everything is absolutely unique, and you're looking at things so shallowly, you can't tell what's making this situation unique and unlike any other.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is true that every situation, every moment, this moment is actually always unique. There's always a uniqueness to it,
It's
even though there's
the ever
not.
new now. It's
Yeah,
the
it's the
ever
ever
new now.
exactly. It's always the now. It's always this present moment, which in turn one could say, well, then there's no uniqueness. But then on the other side of the coin, you could say, well, no, there is always uniqueness in this now that is ever changing. And then once we put the label on it that we think is familiar, that's when we think it's like familiar. We think it's like something we've seen before. But in actuality, man, it's really everything is novel
Yeah.
always. And that's not even fathomable. Like that's why like our brain has to build up these stories and narratives, I think, just so we don't go crazy in a way. But it really is when one can grasp that, the magnificence of the moment. It's so, oh man, just like feeling it right now. It's like it's beautiful to know that like literally every moment is it's this beautiful novel happening. And it's hard to convey. It's hard to really put your finger on, but it's true. It really is. That's the truth. I mean, I know you said you thought about like in the beginning that there is some kind of truth that you knew was there, right? But you didn't know what this truth was. Like you couldn't really like you knew there was something in you that was like, what is this truth? Where do I find it, right? Well, I think we find it just literally in this present moment, the beauty of this, the sanctity of this present moment that is unfolding. It always is unfolding. It always was unfolding. Before we were born, after we die, the magnificence and beauty of this moment is always here, always now. And that is, if one could try to describe the truth for me with a capital T, that's the truth. It's that this moment, it never fades. It's always here. The magnificence, the novel, this new moment. It's always here, always now. Um, maybe I touched upon it a little bit there for people. Maybe you can kind of grasp what I'm trying to say. But even that, even me just speaking about it, doesn't really do it justice. You know?
Mhm.
Yeah, man. I don't know what else to say after that. Yeah, man. Be here now. Be here now, bro. Um, do you have any last words for the podcast? Anything you want to get off your chest? I think we can probably start to wrap it up after that. Anything you have to say?
No, it's just the the essence of the pointer to realization has always been, be here now, or abide as silence, or be still, be silent, be fully aware. Not
Yeah,
even thinking. It's like these are all pointers to that. Because you can just being here is enough.
exactly. Mm-hmm. It really is, man. There's nowhere to go, nothing to do, no one to be. It's enough. We're enough. We're all enough. We're all looking to try and find our enoughness, try and find a sense of wholesomeness in something else or somebody else, some kind of external validation. But really, it's all within, man. It's all within, baby. We've heard it before. it's cliche. We've all heard it before, but it really is. It's like right here, right now, it's enough. I'm feeling it. I don't know about you. I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Beautifully said. Yeah, man. I appreciate your time and effort, wisdom coming on here. This was cool. Um, don't have anything else to say. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Wish you all the best. I'll put all your information down in the description for everybody. But keep doing your thing. Appreciate your
Over
time.
you. You too. Thank you much for having me.
Peace out, Eric.